Good evening, ladies. Thank you for your patience. This is the second class for women beekeepers of West Virginia. And tonight we're going to talk about beekeeping equipment. I'm going to keep it short and sweet because we are looking at basics for like year one, two, three, using standard equipment to the best of our ability till you learn to use and understand your bees. All right, I'm a retired teacher, so of course I always have books. On the left, you have Beekeeping Basics that is published by the Penn State Extension. Absolutely wonderful book. Multiple states use it. On the right is a really cool book called First Lessons in Beekeeping that was published in the early 1900s and has been reprinted multiple times. It's sold by Dant and it's less than $10. And it is an absolutely best $10 investment you can make to follow along with your beekeeping journey. All right. Humans have been keeping honeybees for honey, harvesting honey for a very long time. And bees made their homes and logs and skeps and which are made out of straw, all these different variety of beekeeping homes. But the problem was you could not inspect the bees and you could not harvest the honey without destroying the hive and crushing the comb. So along came this gentleman named Lorenzo Langstroth. And in 1852, he figured something out really cool. He discovered something called bee space. So think about a traditional hive that you look at that we use nowadays. That hive is totally dark inside. Those bees move around and do their business as this large social unit. And bee space means they need 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch necessary to permit their movement within that hive. So we're talking the space between your frames, between your woodenware. If you have a space less than 1/4 inch, the only thing the bees are going to do with it is propolis it. Propolis is made from bee resin. It is like the super glue of bees. They will glue and stick everything down. If the space is larger than 3/8 of an inch, they'll build wax comb in it. You get something called wonky comb, where you do not want your bee comb to be. So this gentleman, who was a minister from Ohio, God bless him, patented this Langstroth hive in 1852. At that point, the United States wanted to be able to go in and inspect the hive, see how the bees are doing, harvest honey without destroying the hive. And this is what the basic standard hive we use today comes from. The picture on the left is from the Penn State Extension book, and it's basically most of what we're going over tonight. At the bottom, it says hive stand. Well, hive stand to me is something you stand the bees on, but it's this fancy bottom. We're going to talk about a bottom board. We're going to talk about hive bodies, queen excluders, a super that your honey goes in. Not going to talk about combs. We're going to talk about an inner cover and an outer cover. If you or someone that loves you or thinks you're the most awesome person in the world has woodworking abilities, there's this great book called Building Beehives for Dummies, and it gives you all the very specific dimensions, just as the picture from the Penn State book does on the left, because if you do not build it to the proper measurements, your bees are not going to do what it is that you want them to do. So what are we going to learn tonight? We're going to learn the parts of the hive stand, bottom board, hive bodies, frames, comb, queen excluder, inner cover, outer cover, and feeders. We're going to look at ancillary equipment, your smoker, your hive tools, your protective clothing, veils, jackets, suits, and gloves. All right. I'm going to preface this with the pictures I'm using tonight are from my bee equipment. Some of it is old. Some of the pictures are old. Some of the hives are unpainted. That's not what you're supposed to do. Some of them are dirty. That's not what you're supposed to do. But you're getting Sue Olson's apiary in the last 10 years. When I first got my first two hives, I was so excited. I live in southwestern PA on 22 acres where there is no flat land. So the picture on the left, I had a friend come in with the bobcat, made a fairly flat space. I was told to keep my hives up about 18 inches. So if the skunks tried to eat my bees, their bellies would be exposed and the bees could sting them. So I propped up my cinder blocks. But what's wrong with this picture? Well, over time, your ground settles and your cinder blocks get crooked. And your beehive, for the most part, is supposed to be level for them to properly build comb. Um, Sometimes we'll slant it just a little bit forward to keep moisture to run out the front board. But that's what I could do. And that's what I was able to do when I got my first two hives. It didn't last long. Middle picture, I got smarter. I laid my cinder blocks down. I used rough cut 2x6s that were on my property. And I used to have four hives on there, but over time, the wood began to rot. And right now, that last hive is basically over a cinder block because that wood is getting ready to break. That stand needs replaced this year. A hive with two deeps and a couple supers of honey weighs 100 some pounds, and you don't want it to break and your hive fall down. The third picture shows my current winter setup, and just a small picture of the hive stand I'm using, but it is much more expensive, but it is very solidly built. I could put 1,000+ pounds. I could put five hives on that stand, not a problem. You build your hive stand out of what you have available or what you can afford. You don't need to buy expensive hive stands. If you have the money and you want to play with them, absolutely. The main thing is you want it to be where the ground is not going to settle. You want your hives to be solid and be able to hold the weight. So now I got a place to put my hives. The first thing I start off with is something called a bottom board. The two upper pictures show you on the left, that bottom board can be solid. On the right, that bottom board is screened. They're screened so the air moves up and down. If you talk to 10 beekeepers, you're going to have five that say they love solid bottom boards, and you're going to have five that swear by screen bottom boards. And the popularity of the both go in and out. Again, when you ask a beekeeper a question, you're going to get a million different answers. You're going to use what you have or what you find out after those first couple years works best for you. I have a tendency to lean towards my screen bottom boards because the bottom left picture shows this board. And I could take that board and slide it underneath my screen. So when I do my mite treatments, my dead mites fall through and I can count them. I can, during the winter, look at my bees and see the activity by the amount of chewed wax I see on the bottom. But again, bottom boards can be solid or screened. First couple years you're doing bees does not make a difference. Once I have my bottom board, now I want to put a box on it. And those boxes are called hive bodies. And they come in three standard sizes. You have deeps, mediums, and shallows. The deep boxes are typically what you start off with to rear your brood. Most first, second, third year beekeepers, and some of us that may keep it a long time, run what we call two deep brood boxes. The next thing I do is if you look at the bottom left picture, I have my bottom board, I have my two deep boxes, and that yellow box there, well, that's where my honey is. And that's where my bees collect my honey. And that box is a medium. There are some people that actually run medium boxes instead of deeps. You can also look at the bottom right picture. That box only holds 5 frames. It's called a nucleus. People call them nukes. You'll hear it pronounced nuck. You hear it nuke or nuck, whatever floats your boat. The most important thing as a new beekeeper is these boxes, except for the nucleus box, come in either that they will hold 10 frames or 8 frames. You need to make the decision when you start buying equipment because it's an investment into that woodenware. Do you want boxes that hold 10 frames or 8 frames? You cannot mix and match them. They are stacking on each other. An 8-frame box is not going to work with a 10-frame box. Some people like the 8-frame boxes better because they say they're not nearly as heavy. Well, I started off with 10 frames and boxes, and I'm not going to go buy 8-frame boxes. So when I go to move a box, if it's too heavy, I take an empty box and I pull 3 or 4 frames. And then guess what? I can pick up the box. Once I have my bottom board and I've got my hive body on, now I need to fill it up. And with that, I'm going to use frames and combs. On the left is a wooden frame, and they come the same thing. It comes size for a deep box, a medium box, or a shallow box. Shallow boxes are rarely used. Frame consists of a top bar, two end bars, and a bottom bar. In that frame, you are going to insert plastic foundation. As a new beekeeper, you're probably going to be using plastic foundation. You can put in sheets of beeswax that need to be wired. But again, we're sticking to, I am a beginning beekeeper. What's the easiest and most convenient way to start? When you go to purchase your plastic foundation, it comes in either light or dark, waxed or unwaxed. In my deep boxes where my queen is laying her eggs and raising her brood, I like to use the dark foundation. I have 64-year-old eyes. When I pull a frame out and I am looking for eggs that the queen has laid in each one of those little individual cells, it's much easier to see a small white egg against dark foundation. I prefer lighter foundation for my honey because that's just the way I roll. You could buy your frames waxed or unwaxed. You could get it single waxed, double waxed, triple waxed. They all cost more money. For new beekeepers, you're typically starting with just naked plastic foundation inserted into a frame. You want to find wax somewhere, and somebody else can give you better suggestions. And then you could take that wax and rub it onto that plastic foundation, because the bees will be much more attracted to begin pulling wax comb out on that new foundation. And we'll go over that in later classes. All right. So where do I get these boxes and frames? You could go to a supplier and buy a complete thing ready to go, or you can buy unassembled equipment. So in the upper left picture, those are a bunch of frames that are ready to be assembled. The picture on the upper right are boxes that are ready to be assembled. And the bottom picture is the waterproof glue and some of the nails that I use. The waterproof glue, Titebond 3, is a very common brand. I use a larger nail in my boxes. I use smaller nails in my frames. The nails basically are to stabilize. The glue is important. The glue is actually what imparts the strength to that wood to keep it together. Little hint, all these frames and boxes, if you have them, you need to assemble them before April. Because if you need them, because you have a hive swarming, or you found more bees and they look like they do in my garage currently, they are of no use to you. You can't hurry up and assemble them, let them dry, and paint them. It doesn't work that way. I've learned that lesson. All right, queen excluders. People use them, people do not use them, but as a beginning beekeeper, it's nice to know what they are. They can appear like this as a metal frame. You can also see the metal with a wooden frame around it, and sometimes they're made of plastic, and they have these little metal slats. The purpose of a queen excluder is to exclude a queen where you do not want her to be. So if I have my brood boxes and I'm putting on a honey super, sometimes queens will go up there and lay eggs. Well, eventually they're going to hatch out and go, but if I don't want the queen laying brood up in my honey supers, then I put this queen excluder on. My worker bees can pass through those openings. 99% of the time, a queen that is laying cannot get her fat abdomen through those. So it keeps her excluded from where you do not want her to be. Is it something I used in my first 3 years of beekeeping? Absolutely not. Do you want to know what it is? Absolutely. So I have my bottom board. I have my boxes. I have my frames in with foundation. And now in this picture, I'm showing you an inner cover. It rests on top of your uppermost box and beneath the outer telescoping cover. The whole reason for this inner cover is so that when you put your final lid on your box, the bees don't glue it. They don't propolize it down. So this inner cover, you put it there and it prevents your telescoping cover from being put glued down. When you look at these two deep boxes here, my inner cover is on, but now I have added this telescoping cover, which allows my hives to be protected from the weather. If you notice, there is typically a piece of metal that is around the top of it. You take your hive tool, and it's very easy to lift that off. And then you're really going to typically, if you have bees that do a lot of propolis, you're going to have to use your hive tool to get that inner cover off. Now, as a beginning beekeeper, your first 3 years, that is typically what your hive is going to look like. If you go to Phyllis's for the workshop, or if you've gotten equipment from somebody, there are some beekeepers that use something called a migratory lid. It's much more simpler than this. It allows them to stack their hives and push them close together. But this is something typically in your first couple of years of beekeeping, you're not working with. All right. I have these things called entrance reducers. It's mind blowing. Guess what they do? They reduce the size of the entrance. Why do I want to reduce the size of the entrance? I just paid $180, $200 for my package of new bees. I'm all excited. I'm putting 5 frames of bees into an 8 or 10 frame box. And I only have so many guard bees that can guard the entrance to my hive. So you can take these, they lots of times come in these 2 wood strips that you see here. And some of those wood strips on one side, they have a very small opening, might be a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch wide. And that way, the guard bees that you have, very few at the beginning, can guard that very small entrance to keep other bees out they don't want in the hive. As your hive increases in size, you could take that entrance reducer, flip it over, and you get a much wider entrance, but it's still restricted. So your guard bees don't have to work so hard to guard the hive. The metal one with the holes is a mouse guard. And again, they come in different shapes and sizes, but it allows the bees in and out. But when it's cold, like tonight, the mice don't have the option to crawl into that hive and create a nasty, disgusting, fecal filled mess in the bottom of your hive. Ancillary equipment, we're going to look at smoker, hive tools, protective clothing, and feeders. The smoker. The goal of your smoker is to produce large quantities of cool, thick smoke to disguise the alarm pheromones that bees produce when they're agitated. You have to remember, bees live in pitch black. You go out there quietly, carefully, stealthily, and you crack that upper telescoping cover. You take it off. Then you take your hive tool and you have to crack off that inner cover they've propolized down. Well, at this point, the girls are like, something's going on out there. They can produce a pheromone that says, hey, watch out, we got danger incoming. By smoking your bees, it helps to mask and disguise that alarm pheromone that allows you to better work with your bees. Suitable smoker fuels include wood shavings, bark, dry leaves, pine needles, burlap, and baler twine. Any baler twine or burlap you use, you want to make sure it's not treated with anything. And it looks so simple. Put stuff in a container, start it on fire, you squeeze it, get the fire going. But it only took me about 5 years before I could get a smoker lit that stayed lit for more than a half an hour. And it was a struggle. So one of the best things I think you can learn when you're doing an in-person workshop is forcing everybody to light a smoker in front of everybody else, because it's not always that easy. So practice, practice, practice. And if you hear heavy breathing, I have a 96-pound elderly dog trying to get in my lap. It's not me, even though I'm really excited to share this. All right, hive tools. Hive tools are a metal bar used for prying apart frames in a brood chamber or a honey super, separating hive bodies, and scraping away wax and propolis. That is the collection of hive tools that I have. Some are clean and shiny. Every time I go to a show or a conference, somebody's giving out free tools, or sometimes they're gifts. And I always collect them because I always keep what I call a going out set of gloves and hive tools. When you are going into somebody else's hive, you don't ever want to take in a dirty hive tool. If somebody's coming to help mentor you with your hives and their hive tools got propolis and funk all over it, you want to have a clean tool for them to use, because it's a way that you could spread disease from hive to hive. A good beekeeper typically will clean their hive tool when they're done. As you can see, I do not always follow my advice, because you could see numerous hive tools of mine Actually, those are fairly clean for me. You need to have more than one hive tool because unless you have one of those cool belts like Phyllis does with the magnet on it, you lay them down where they fall into the grass and they seem to disappear. And you think the red paint or the yellow paint is going to make them easier to see. Well, over time, when you clean them, I use heat, I use alcohol, my paint has a tendency to disappear. So hive tools have a way of like, it's like that sock in the dryer. You just don't know where they go. Protective clothing. You should always, always, always wear a bee veil when working with bees, prevents stings to your face and eyes. This is a cowboy hat, basically, off of Amazon with a net over it. And if you notice under the armpits of my beautifully modeled person with the red kickball, you have these little elastic straps that go underneath your arms. So you put the hat on, the veil covers your face, the elastic straps hold the veil down over your chest and your back to keep those little pesky girls from trying to crawl up into your face. Bee stings to the eye are a very, very, very serious event. You also can wear a full-size jacket or a full-size suit or a jacket. If you notice the picture on the left, the front of that veil, it literally unzips all the way around when I'm not on my bees and I can pull it down. The veil on the right, I have to unzip it around my neckline. So jackets and veils, when you go to look at them, there's different styles, how you access your face. But this is going to depend on your comfort level handling your bees. Bees in the spring are typically fairly pretty, friendly. Bees in the fall, or when you're pulling honey, or if they're being bothered by something, deems that you're going to wear a jacket or a suit. All right, gloves. The goal of an experienced beekeeper is to be able to work bees with no gloves. You want to be a ninja. You want to work slow. You don't want sudden movements. You don't want to jar your equipment. You don't want to make a lot of noise to irritate them. But as a beginning beekeeper, you typically don't have that zen with the bees yet. So there's different types of gloves. They can come up over your elbows. They can come to your wrist. The picture on the right shows you different styles of gloves down to this beautiful pair of gloves that have obviously never been used. And the green ones are nitrile gloves. Those are surgical gloves. And typically the bees will not sting through them. They can, but what they do is give you the ability to be able to feel your frames and be much more gentler with them as you are lifting them out of your hive. With the larger gloves, you have a tendency not to be as careful because usually you're not going to get stung through them. That filthy, disgusting, dirty pair is from when I was pulling honey at the end of the year. I typically will buy a couple new pair of gloves a year because the bees will sting those leather gloves. And when the bees sting them, that stinger is in the glove and it leaves that pheromone that could trigger more bees to come out. A trick to that is you can actually smoke your gloves. But again, gloves is something that I have a tendency to replace every year. Feeders. Why do I have to feed my bees? If I'm a new beekeeper, I'm going to be getting a nuke or a package of bees. I'm going to have foundation that is not drawn out yet. My bees have no resources. So I'm going to need to feed them sugar water or some other type of substitute. And there is a plethora of ways to feed your bees. Again, from very low cost methods to more expensive methods, they all serve the same purpose. They have pros and cons. The upper left picture is something called a Boardman feeder. You fill that mason jar with sugar water, and then you screw it into that feeder and you slide that into your entrance. You have to be careful with those. They're very inexpensive, but you can get robbing from nearby hives. The upper right picture is the red bottom is actually a chicken feeder. And I take that when I used to use them and I would put pebbles in the bottom. I would put an empty box on top of my first deep. I would literally set this feeder on top of my frames, put the empty box over it, and then put my inner cover on, and that allows my bees to feed. The one on the right is specifically made for bees. It's spring loaded, same deal. I put it on top of my deep box. I put an empty box over it so it's protected, and then my inner cover, my telescoping cover on the top. Bottom left is a pail, and that little circle has like a screen from Windows screen in it. And you take that and you fill it full of sugar water and you invert it onto your inner cover. So it's over that little hole. You put an empty box on the top and it feeds your bees. The box is a more expensive bee feeder, but it's actually pretty cool. You can buy them for either 8 or 10 frames. You sit it on top of your box with your frames, and then you fill the left and the right side with your sugar water or what you are feeding them. They have slatted bottoms that float so your bees do not drown. And if you look at the middle of the box, you see a solid line. That's the space where the bees crawl up from the frames underneath to go in to feed. So each of the feeders, they have their pros and cons. But again, you're a first couple year beekeeper, there's a lot going into it. All right, that's it. Any questions before quiz time? Are we there?
Oh, I love quiz time.
All right. Okay. So, who designed the modern hive?
Lorenzo Langstroth.
You go. Perfect. What is bee space and why is it important?
There's like a 1/4 inch or 3/8 inch.
It's 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch. Why is that important?
To give them enough space, but not too much space to build.
Perfect. If it's less than a 1/4 inch, what are they going to do?
Yep. Build. Cool.
If it's less than a 1/4 inch, they're going to propolize it. It's going to be nasty. I hope I don't mess this up. If it's more than 3/8 of an inch, what are they going to do?
I wrote make a wonky cone.
Exactly. Perfect. All right. What are the 3 standard sizes of bee boxes?
Deep, medium, and shallow.
Perfect. Perfect. What are the 2 different types of bottom boards?
Screen and solid.
Perfect. And are you going to be wrong if you choose one over the other?
No.
No. What is a queen excluder used for?
To keep the queen from laying eggs in the honey.
Yep. Or when you get a little more experience with this and you're splitting hives and doing other things, there are other ways you can use it. But for my first couple years here, getting the swing of keeping bees is just keeping the queen out. In my first couple years of beekeeping, do I even need to use a queen excluder for the most part?
No.
Probably not till you're more familiar. All right. What is the difference between an inner cover and a telescoping cover?
The inner cover rests on top and prevents glue from getting on the telescoping cover.
Absolutely perfect. Exactly what it says. The inner cover is just kind of sealing everything off. And then that telescoping cover is protecting that hive from weather. Also, you're able, with that inner cover on there, it's easier to pry that telescoping cover off. Why use an entrance reducer?
To reduce the size of the entrance so that the bees don't have to work so hard to guard the entrance.
Absolutely perfect answer, because you think about it, when you get your first package or your first nuke, you're going to have approximately, somebody correct me, between 10, 20,000 bees. And then once they start laying, those numbers are going to drastically increase. So your guard bees have to work really hard at protecting that hive when they are first building up their wax and their stores. So you don't want them to have to work as hard. What is the purpose of a smoker?
Hey, Sue, can you stop sharing so we can
Oh,
see
I'm
everybody?
sorry.
It's all right.
That's all right.
Thank you.
I'm clueless. Okay. Where am I? Stop
Sorry,
share.
ladies. There we
There we
go.
go. All right. Um, what is the purpose of a smoker?
To disguise the alarm pheromones that bees will give off.
What
Perfect.
is your name? You are rocking this.
Pamela.
Thank
She's
you,
like
Pam.
Heaven was last year, and Brandy.
All right. Why do you use a hive tool? Why do I need that big old metal bar when I'm approaching my beehives?
To pry apart the frames and the honey super
Yep.
and the hive bodies
Yes, ma'am.
that
Yes,
separate the
ma'am.
hive bodies and to scrape away the wax and the propolis.
Yes.
And
Because
and
not
it's better.
only, oh, sorry, Phil.
No, I was just gonna say it's better than a pocket knife, and I've had to use that because I couldn't find my half tool. So
And that's why you keep more than one hive tool. We won't,
yeah.
we'll get those stories later. And not only are you pulling those boxes apart, but as she said, when you're going in and you're looking at it, your bees will, when they're getting ready, they need a new box, so you haven't put it on yet. They'll start building comb on the top of the inner cover. They'll start building comb on top of your frames. And if you get in the habit of just kind of scraping some of that off, it just keeps things a little neater as you move along. What part of your body should always be protected when working bees?
Your face and eyes.
Yep, your eyes. Eyes are the two wonderful gifts that God gave you, and you need to keep those protected. And I've walked out to my hives when it's cold, thinking nobody's going to bother me. I'm just going to go put my ear up. And dude, there's just always one that's got to be the overachiever that will appear out of nowhere and get you.
Yep.
And why do bees need to feed? Why do I need to feed bees sugar water? And you're going to go into more of this in as these classes go on. But again, when you're starting with new bees, they have no wax, they have no pollen, they have no nectar, they have nothing but each other. So you feed them that sugar water. You start your bees in the spring, and there you're going to be taught this in later classes. Bees will not pull wax unless there is a strong nectar flow on and they have a strong food supply. So that's why when you get a new hive, you feed so they can pull wax. Because once we hit maybe the beginning of July and your nectar flow is done, your bees are not going to pull wax at all like they did in the spring. So they need to have resources. And when you're starting with new bees, somebody didn't fill the pantry before they put them in the new house. Ladies, you did a great job. Any questions?
You did a great job too. Thank you.
I didn't think I had to say
Sue,
it again.
Sue,
Yes, Boo.
how do you clean hive tools?
My hive tools, I'll be honest with you, sometimes I just put them into my smoker if it's still burning when I'm done. And then I bring them in here and I put alcohol on them. How do you clean your hive tools? Because everybody does it different.
I take my torch and I burn everything off, wipe it all down, and then I put 92% alcohol on them.
Perfect. Anybody else want to share how they clean their hive tools?
I
I
take a
use
penknife and scrape it off, and then I put hot water on them, and I have that propolis, so I keep it even as minuscule as it is, and then I take dish soap and put it on there, and a scrubby, a stainless steel, and they're sparkling. And
Beautiful.
I don't put alcohol on mine.
I use Dawn Power Wash. That is so good for getting off propolis and a like a Brillo pad, like the stainless steel
Yeah,
scrubbies.
yeah,
Yep.
that's
And
what I
then
use.
I take alcohol to them after I wash off the power wash. And they're
Perfect.
um and
Good.
power wash, I noticed I used to just use alcohol and that does take all the paint off. But now that I don't use as much alcohol, it's just to make sure I get off any soap residue. I'm not
Hmm.
like losing the color on my hive tools anymore.
Very
Nice.
nice. Kathy, you're muted.
Okay, I was trying to be quiet. I'm out of town. Anyway, have you ever heard of Norwick cleaning
Yes,
products? They
yes.
have a fabric booster, and I soak mine in the fabric booster, and it takes everything off and makes them clean. And it's just a soapy solution. It works. I say the
Well,
Progress first, though.
I'm a cheapskate. Norix is expensive,
Well,
and
I use it on a lot of stuff in my house. The soap
yeah.
things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm cleaning rags. I'll throw them in too, and they come out really nice and clean. All my
Nice.
clothes are really clean right now because it's winter time.
Yeah.
I have a quick question,
Yeah,
something
Shayna.
I was hoping we would talk about. We didn't really talk about why we do paint the bee boxes and why we don't. And so I was really interested in finding that out tonight, and we didn't really talk about it.
And
That's a
I
great
Talk about it a
question.
little bit.
totally
Great
forgot.
question.
It is wood. And if you looked at some of those pictures I have, I didn't assemble my stuff in the appropriately timely fashion when I needed it. So I threw out unpainted boxes. Unpainted boxes, after a couple of years, are going to start to deteriorate. So you can paint your boxes. And typically, what I do is I go to Sherman-Williams and I go to where they've had paint that has been returned because it was the wrong thing. And I use exterior paint. You got a gallon of white paint last year, exterior paint that was 85 for the gallon. And the guy charged me $5 for it. There are people that will buy hives that are wax dipped. They're pricey. People like the way that they look. You can buy hives that are made out of cedar and other things, but again, you're talking very pricey. The whole reason to paint your hives is to prevent the wood from rotting. So when you paint your hives, like when you're looking your hive boxes, you're only painting the outside. You are not painting the flat part of the wood where the box sits on the box, because anytime you're not painting your frames, you're only painting your bottom board, your telescoping lid, and the outside of your bee boxes. Because when you are scraping your frames or the tops of your boxes, you do not want to be scraping any paint chips into your propolis or anything that you are collecting off of it. Does that make
Yeah.
any sense?
Now you can also, I posted a thing the other day that they're doing torching now, and this guy torches it and then he scrubs it off and then he sands it off, and he said that's all you have to do and it prolongs the wood. Because and it all depends. Like we used to we only got our boxes from Man Lake, which is a big box bee store, and we have and that's good paint, Sue. I'm sure, because Sherwin-Williams is so expensive. But I went to Walmart and got brown, I think, and got them in multicolors. And once you're at my house, you'll go, oh yeah, those are Phyllis's because they're all multicolors. But and I tried to do, and I have my pretty ones I did log cabin stain, and it does really well. And the bees don't touch it or anything. So, and it made it a beautiful. And I said, I wish I had this when I started out, because they would all be like that, not multicolored, but I deal with what I have. But now I did read or listen to a video last year or year before, and Cayman Reynolds says to paint the tops of them because on your box, because the rain and stuff goes down in and it protects the wood. But it's just whatever. And then if you do that, then like Sue was saying, you don't want to scrape that for propolis, but you have to scrape it. So you just throw that propolis away or put it somewhere where, take the paint chip out of it and then they can reuse it. But you don't want to put it, for human consumption. But
And my dad kept bees, and typically they will say, do not take used equipment from other people. But when I had about 6 of my dad's deeps that had been inspected for American foul brood with the sticker
Right.
on them. And those deep boxes my father had used for 10 years, and they were painted with white paint. And I have used those 4 boxes for another 10 years, and I just finally had to retire them. And where they rotted and started to fall apart was on the bottom of the box where it sat on the
Yes.
bottom board. I was surprised, but those painted boxes lasted in use for 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you do what works for you. I have boxes out there now that I know are going to rot. I need to switch them out because I never painted them.
Oh, I've got some that I didn't want to go in and disturb the hive, so I just duct taped it. And it's got a big hole like that, so I did layers and layers of duct tape just to try to get them through winter, and then I'll change them in the spring. The paint that we use, it's expensive. It's not for everybody, but we go to Lowe's and get, or Home Depot, one of them, and get the Bear, and it's enamel, and it is awesome. They're probably 10 to probably 10 years old, and they look brand new. And it's worth it. And if you want different colors, then you can give it a base color, and then you can change your colors, because I want to, now that I'm going downsizing in my hives, I'll have more time, and I want to, like, all my supers, whether they're deep or mediums, I want to paint them all gold. I don't know why I'm echoing, but yeah, so you can do that. Yeah, go ahead.
One more question. So since it's just to protect the wood, you could paint or stain, right? That's what you're saying?
Yeah.
You don't necessarily.
You don't have to paint, and you can burn. You can take a torch and burn it. You can look that up. And people were going pretty crazy a couple of years ago with the wax dipped, and they have pros and cons of that. Some people just absolutely swear by them, and others say that they sweat inside and the bees don't like them very well. So before you think that you want them because they look natural, your stain, you can do a clear stain, and it'll be a little darker. But it's wood, and if you do it early enough before your bees get in it, then your stain. Now, I will tell you that using the log stain, it's oil based, so it had to be on there for a while, because then your hands would get oily. But that's fine, because I don't use gloves, especially doing stuff like that. So I would just wipe it on my pants or whatever. So it's not like I had it on my bee gloves, and and then I touched bees. So, but it absorbs. It's pine. Our wood boxes are pine, and it absorbs pretty good. Night, ladies. Thanks, Rhonda. See you later, alligator. Bye, Grandma.
Hey, Sue.
Yes, ma'am.
Nice shirt you had on your cowboy hat veil display.
I wanted to see if anybody, I was noticing the kickball. I'm putting it on my bed going, and anybody that sees my background, I lost my house in a landslide, so I'm currently living in my garage. So if you see wrenches and kids, I'm living a little crazy right now, but I have a meeting at 10 o'clock with my contractor tomorrow to go over the architect's plan. Yeah, now I need to hit the lottery, because you know how that goes, but it's all good.
We
Dude,
do.
that was
We
a great
do.
class.
Yeah, good.
That was good.
Right.
That was good.
Pam, Shayna, Cammie, Amanda, Brandy, Nancy. More questions?
I gotta go. Bye.
I have a question.
Yes.
Good.
So I'm doing research trying to purchase my hives, and I'm like kind of struggling on like where to start, I guess. Like I've looked at Man Lake. I've tried to even look local. Obviously, I'm in a Charleston area. Like I don't know. I don't know. I want to get quality, obviously. Right.
So have you looked at, guys, where is Bearsville Bees in location to her?
Parkersburg.
Hours away. I've got a guy, you can buy him from me, or I've got a guy, Bill Lane, that is excellent. And I think there's someone on here. Pam, was that you? No, someone talked to me the other day about it. Maybe she didn't come back. I don't remember who it was, but he's in Ona.
And we're talking about like the actual, like, I was going to get my bees
Boxes.
from you, like the actual boxes.
Yep.
Like, yeah, like I don't want to
Oh,
build
you're
one.
talking equipment?
Yeah.
Equipment.
Equipment, sorry.
I have purchased my woodenware the last 3 years, because I go to the Bee Expo down in Louisville. So John Hill from Hillco, his stuff has been absolutely beautiful quality that goes together. You have to watch where you're purchasing from because you will get pieces and they just don't want to assemble and go together.
Right.
And John is, if you are not satisfied with something that he sends you, he will fix it. But I have done wood and wear from him for 3 years.
Where's he at?
Indiana, Illinois, somewhere in the Midwest.
Oh.
But I get it at the expo because I don't have to pay shipping and he sells it at a discount.
If my husband makes it home, I have all kinds of deep boxes and we have all kinds of, because, I've said it before, I kept 250 at one time and now I'm only keeping 130. So I have all that, or 110. So I have all that that's just sitting there. And all I have to do is get it inspected and then I can sell it. And if you guys are painting it, then all you have to do is throw some white color on it and then, cover what I've painted. Now, if it's stained, then it has to be stained. The color, paint won't stick on stain.
Right.
So, yeah,
Right.
but we can go through it, and it all depends what kind of winter I have. Also, from March to April that I can get in my shed and organize it all. But if you're getting bees from the north, then you're not going to get them until May anyway.
Right. Okay.
So,
great.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think I was still planning on going through you, Phyllis. I didn't have any other. I had never thought about it doing anybody else. Going with anyone else. So yeah.
Bill is my go-to for down that area, and my daughter lives in St. Albans, and so we can probably meet you.
Yeah.
Along
Well,
the
and I
road.
don't mind to come up either. So, but we can talk about that for sure.
Okay.
But yeah, cool. I've just been looking and I'm just trying to get all my equipment together. I don't want to be like in the 11th hour trying to, get everything ready and stuff. So, it's just been a challenge to find. Yeah. Cool.
It's a good plan.
Right, thank
And
you.
what Sue said about the different sizes is true. When I first got bees, there was a company called Brushy Mountain, and I got most of my woodenware from them. When they went out of business, I had to find somebody else. And I noted that any new boxes that I bought were slightly smaller or maybe slightly bigger than the ones I already had. So there's a little bit of overhang, no openings that the bees can get in and out of, but they
just don't jive.
They don't align perfectly.
That's a good point. Yep.
Yeah. If you're going to buy from a company, you might want to find one that you like and stick with them so that all the pieces will be the same size.
At that given time, because like I said, we always went to Man Lake. Everything that we have is Man Lake. Well, find out they sent us a shipment, or we brought it home. We traveled up there. It's 12-hour trip, and started putting them together, and they didn't jive. They would not go. It's a dovetail thing, and they wouldn't go together. So my husband called them, and they said, "Oh yeah, we've been getting a lot of calls. We changed companies." And our guys mixed them up, didn't know. So they were sending one company's, one or two sides or three sides, and then another company's other side, and they wouldn't go together. Rick even chiseled them with a thing just to get, because I needed them. But they did us right. They sent us a whole new thing. And but yeah, so Michelle is right. But you might, you'll get a good thing at that given time. And then if the company, and ask them, just like, and Man Lake would know if you ask them. And I think their shipping is free for $100, over $100 order, which that's easily to do. So,
and something else to think about, if you're going to start with 2 hives, which is common, so you can compare the two. When I started with 2 hives, I bought for each hive 2 deep boxes and 2 mediums for honey. What I didn't plan ahead, though, was I was using feeders that needed to be covered up with an empty box. And so it was okay when I started because I had 2 deep boxes But when you put your bees in, you're only going to use that first deep because you're not going to put another box with frames on it till they've got that pulled out 75-80% of the way. So if you're
Right.
using a feeder that's sitting inside of your hive, you have to put another box over it, an empty box.
If you use that feeder. So you can
Yes.
look at other feeders like frame feeders or top feeders.
Oh, I
Yeah.
had a frame feeder picture that I took of yesterday when it was 6 degrees out, and I forgot to put it in.
Yeah. And you can leave those frame feeders in year round if you wanted to. That's what's nice about those. I just, you can put insulation board in them, or you can fill them full of hay or straw and leave them in there. But yeah, there's ways around it. There's a lot, you need to really think on how, and that's what's nice. Well, it's kind of late in the ball game, but if you guys can come up in April, if the weather is fitting, and you can see, because I've got a top feeder, I've got a frame feeder, and I think I got rid of my Boardman feeders. I don't use those at all, and I don't know if you guys remember Sue telling you what a Boardman feeder is, the one that sits
They
on the
screw
front.
onto the mason jar and they slide in the front, but you have to be very careful because you could get other bees trying to rob them out.
Right. Yeah, they're bigger hives. And you think, well, I'm getting two hives and they're going to be the same size. But if you live around anybody, then it's more than likely that you have beehives out, 5 miles, and they'll travel to get your feed if it's a drought and you're feeding sugar water. They will
Or
kill
feral
your hive.
hives living in the trees in the woods.
Yeah, yeah, very true. Very true. Hmm. Um, and I wear the same hat, that the veil that Sue was mentioning, but I don't and Debbie does too, and also Kathy does. But I don't recommend those to newbies, because if you don't keep them tight, they're going to get up in there. And I think Debbie's shaking her head big time. But I just went through, and my elastic wore out, so I just last year redid all my elastic, and I didn't get one bee this year. But the veil, the fencing or whatever, my favorite jacket is from, and Kathy, how do you, or Debbie, how do you say the Dadant?
Dadant.
No,
No, I talked to him in the elevator at the expo.
What did he say?
Damn it.
Danton.
Darn it. It's
I-
one small word. Yeah.
I watched the grandson
elevator
do a
last
video
week.
today, so I could say it correctly, and that bastard said Dadant.
We're recording there.
Oh,
So
sorry.
Is it Dadot like fondant?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Ronda's fondant.
The other
But
thing I
yeah,
forgot to
yeah,
mention, as Phil's talking about bees, when you're wearing either pants or a full suit, they start and they crawl up. They don't crawl down. So
yeah,
they will go up your pants leg. They will find a way up. So I typically wear like those rubbery boots till it's too hot.
yeah.
You could put rubber bands around your pants leg. You could put a Velcro strap. They will go up your pants. And you may have the sweetest, kindest hive in the spring that never bothers you. And you go out one day like, oh, I don't have to worry about my girls. They're always so nice. And then they're possessed. Well, there could have been a skunk out there the night before. There could be something that's
Right,
irritating
right.
them that makes them ultra defensive. So you
Hmm.
always need to be prepared.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Talk to Kathy when we were at the retreat. Um, yeah, we went to check. I did I think an oxalic acid on them so we could have the drops. And she went up, and she was like, "Yeah, okay," because they weren't flying out. And then I made them mad, and one got her right here, and but she was probably about 20 feet off. It zoned in on her and got her. But yeah, you need and we went to one of our conferences, and a guy was talking that his buddy, or maybe even him, a bee went in his ear, and they had an awful time trying to get it out. He had to go to the emergency room. So now when he works, and he's a big commercial guy, and he puts earplugs in. So, and
Ooh.
I usually have, I'm listening to an audio book, or, my Bible lesson, whatever that I've downloaded. And so I do have that covered. But they can, you know, they, the worst one I've ever got was right in here in my nose, and it's so tender. And yeah, it brought me to my knees, and it was a crawl up. Yeah.
Where
So,
would you where would you recommend placing your hives? Like
well,
away
away
from
from your
how,
house,
yeah, how far away do you
definitely.
think?
Well, Debbie's going to do that, right? Aren't you're going to do placement? No, I thought
No,
so.
I'm doing how to get bees.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, you want to, either south or east or
Southeast.
southeast. It can be either. There's three
This,
places you can do them. Yeah, and that's where their interest is going to be.
We'll make sure that somewhere in one of these lessons in the
yeah,
next couple months, we will have on. For
That's a
some
good
reason, I
question.
was looking at the book, where's the best place to set up your hive and
yeah.
Yeah.
pros and cons of it. We'll make sure it's in one of the lessons coming up.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But that's a
Or
great question.
and at
Yeah.
the end, there's also a class from last year where I did that last year. There is a Zoom recording it in on YouTube about it.
Yeah. Yeah. On our channel.
Yeah.
But you don't want to put them under a tree, because that tree's limb might break, and I've lost a hive like that. Well, it wasn't nature, it was my husband cut the tree limb and killed my queen. But yeah, so, and you don't want to put them where it's damp. And mine are in full sun all the time, all the time. They're never in shade, but I don't get 100 degrees either. But
Not in a wind tunnel. If you have a place that it's always a wind tunnel, don't put them in a
yep,
wind tunnel area.
yep, yep.
Want the
Because
sun on them in the morning, come shining on the front of the hive when they wake up in the mornings, they can get out and do their business early.
yeah,
And keeping them in a sunny location will help reduce the damage that small hive beetles will do.
yes, yes, exactly. And
They
different
will not get
areas.
too hot. They will not get too hot where you guys
No.
live. It will not get too hot.
Well, and if you do, then buy screen bottom boards,
Mhm.
and that'll help you ventilate them. So if you live in a hot climate, use screen
But
bottom boards.
we're also available, about any of us, just get on your phone and walk around
Oh
and
yeah,
say, well, this is the place I'm looking at, or here's where I'm looking at, and we'll talk you through it.
yeah, oh yeah, and you can bring it on here, and we can figure out how to share it. And you can share. We can make you co-host, and you can share, and then we're really good
That's
about
what
that.
bee chat's all about. You come in
Yeah,
when
that's
there's not
true.
classes on bee chat and we're like, what's going on this week? Well, I'm having this issue. I'm having this issue. This is happening. Help me, help me, help me.
Yep, yep,
I've needed a
yep.
lot of help for 10 years.
Well, we all have, and I, and
Mhm.
like I said the other day, I'm still learning. Like I've done oxalic acid treatments for what, 3 4 years now, since, yeah, 16 17 18 19 20 21 22 23 8 years. And I just learned, instead of leaving them open, that to use a Kroger bag or a Walmart bag and shut that entrance, and when I get done, I just take them and put them all in one bag and tie it, and then reuse them. And I just learned that last year. So I love these ladies. We all
Yeah.
learn from each other.
You also learn
Sometimes
how
you,
to improvise things.
yeah.
Like instead of buying that big metal mouse guard, you can
Yeah.
use hardware cloth that's
Yep.
big enough for the bees to get in,
That's
but
what I
small
use.
enough
Yep.
to keep mice out.
Hmm.
And it's also, the only thing is with the stuffing that up with when you're doing oxalic acid is a bit
Yeah.
more difficult. So what I've done is take duct tape and put a piece of tape on the sticky side and tape that to that. This way, if the bees are going to come out, they don't get stuck to the duct tape.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah.
I learned that the hard way.
Yeah. I bet you
And
did.
then you
I bet you did.
can cover up that little spot.
Yeah. Now, and there's different ways. I saw a guy in North Carolina that did shims. And your entrance is like this big. So he put a shim there and a shim there and then used that wire like we were talking about just right in the middle. And that's all the entrance that they had. It was probably about like that. So then all you would have to do is, put a piece of paper over it or whatever, and it's closed off. Now, and so you don't really have to worry about doing mite drops because, you should have them pretty well demited by wintertime comes. And then when you do an oxalic acid during the winter time, then you're just maintaining. And then you can, take them off in the spring, the entrance reducers. And then like with me, I have to because I don't have screen bottom board. So I have to put my mite drop board in the front. And then I can do that because if I have my wire on there, then I can't. Now my bottom boards are two different sizes. I don't know if you've seen me post that on our page or not, but in the wintertime you turn it over and they're very little that a mouse can't go through. So I did that to all my other ones, and then my ones that were my honey producers that I didn't break down, that far, then I did the wire so the mice can't get in there. And they
This
really,
is
they don't hurt that much anyway. Go ahead, Debbie.
I could say this is basically why you and Shanda started the whole group is working like a girl because guys and girls work different. They're bigger, they're bullier, they do different. We improvise because we don't lift as much and we're shorter stature, so we work like
Right.
girls.
Yes. I watched a thing on Instagram the other day, and this mother came, well, this kid was racing his motorcycle, and I guess it was the dad or whatever, was trying to get it going because I guess it just stopped. And then the mother, went over the fence and ran down to the bike and picked it up. And, I guess he had it flooded or whatever. So he picked it up like this and gave it a few seconds and then jumped on it and then got it going again. And somebody captioned, commented on it. It's like, yeah, just like a woman, they improvise and men get it done, fix it. And I was like, yeah, that's what we do. We we kind of fix it our way, but you know, we beekeep like women for sure. That's a good one, Debbie. Yep. But we use what we have around us. A lot of
I
us have
can't
come up
I can't
with
work with
different.
my brother at all. I mean, I'll get him once in a while if I'm on a 3 stack hive and get him, but for the most part, I rather just do it
Right.
myself when he's not looking because he's just too rough. Just, picking up and pounding. And one
Oh
day
yeah.
he throwed a whole deep box. I said, Jim, set this over in the yard. He picked up a deep box full of honey, slammed it over the yard, broke the whole thing. Every frame broke, and there was
Oh
all,
man.
all the honey all over the floor. And I just about cried.
I bet.
he
I
just
bet.
just went like that with it, get it out of the way, and
Yep. Yep.
it was done.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the way we were. When we started beekeeping together and I became the gopher. And so one year I was like, yeah, no, I'm done at this. I've been a beekeeper as long as you. So he got his hives and I got my hives, and mine did better, not because of our beekeeping. It's just that he got some that was really diseased and he lost a lot of his bees. We had 10 and 10 and he only got 2 through and I got 8 through. But it's just when you work your bees, you'll find out what works for you. And but if your partner, um, or your cousin, whatever, is working with you, then, don't work the same hive until they get really big. And then it's nice that they go through a box and you go through a box. But that's what we did after we, came back together. Then we would share and share the hive, and then it worked out a lot better. But it seemed like I always got the bottom box with, which you'll learn that when you go through the bottom box, then that's where all the foragers are and the guard bees are, and they come up and yeah. So I had to use a lot more smoke than on the bottom box than, because I don't hardly use any smoke unless they make me. And a nice thing about smoking, I'll tell you this, and it probably will go right over your head, but when you have bees coming up like this, and you want to get in the hive, then you can take your smoker and get it going really good, and then spray on top of over them, and the smoke falls down on them and just calms. You can just hear them just calm down, and then you can start your inspection. So just something to think about when you see a bunch of bees coming up. I see a lot of people taking that smoker and just like this, like a machine gun at them, and it just makes them worse. So if you put a cloud over them and let it fall, then they will be a lot better for it.
And if
You
you
guys have,
burn dried lemon balm in your smoker, they don't care what you do.
there you go. I will try that this year. My plant's not very big, so I really don't want to share it with the bees. So I want to take it for tea. Um,
I have another question. Does the smoke affect the way the honey tastes?
yeah,
Can.
it does if you use a lot of it. Yeah. We don't use hardly any smoke um in our honey supers. We and a lot of times it's capped, so just a light smoke won't hurt it. But if you torture it like some people do with the whole smoker in one super, then yeah, it will taste like smoke.
I just took
All right,
the
Nancy, thanks for
finance. I
coming.
just took the honey judging class for the day down at the Bee Expo in Louisville. And the judges there talked about they were testing all these different honeys in another state earlier in the year. And this honey they tasted like, the only way I could describe it, tasted like rubber tires.
Rubber.
So
Oh,
Yeah.
after
wow.
the judging was over, they came back and they talked to the gentleman. They own a bike shop and they bottle and spin their honey out down in the repair shop where there's all these rubber tires, and that honey, because honey has so little moisture in it, pulls everything in from around that
Hmm.
room, and it
Hmm.
pulled in the smell. They're like, what on earth did you do to this honey? It tastes like rubber, and it was from where it was extracted, which was crazy.
Aw. Oh, that's
Yeah,
a shame.
when I had the class, there was one that they kept saying it tasted like exhaust. And here to come to find out, they stored their boxes in their garage where they pull their car in and out every day. And the exhaust that was in their garage absorbed in there. But we also had a guy, some of you will be meeting him, but he had honey, plus he also had wax entries and stuff, and everything he had. He's a heavy smoker, and it come from his hands and from in his house, and
Oh,
everything that he worked with um, smelled like cigarette smoke. And
oh
they
man.
we even could tell which honey jars was his, and they're all, you're not supposed to know whose any was, but we did know that that was a heavy smoker. It was on the jars, it was on the lid, it tasted in the honey, it was
I'll be dead
on
gone.
his candles. We smelled it.
Huh. Wow. That's something. I've never heard that before. That is
Mm-hmm.
something. Hmm.
You know him. He's our little friend Kathy and I talk about.
Oh, from France or wherever?
Czech.
Czechoslovakia.
Czechoslovakia. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. I
Well,
know who it
hopefully he
is.
learned
Yeah,
something.
Michelle.
Hmm.
Now he did have entries at the expo that Sue and I was at 2 weeks ago, and his stuff did not smell like smoke, because one of the
Okay.
other judges took him on aside from the spring conference and told him it absorbed it. We all know it, and
Very nice.
his stuff was clean at the expo.
Well, there you go. There you go. And I'm sure he's, so proud that he made it that
He
far.
won. He got a
Huh.
ribbon.
Well, there you go. And that's awesome. That's what you guys are there for, is to educate. So kudos to the instructors. You guys have anything else going through your heads?
We kind of got away from the placement one, but we can
That's
circle
okay.
back to it.
That's okay. We're kind of bee chat too, so it's working
We're
out
still
really well.
recording too.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, ladies, I've got to roll. I have to get ready for that contractor to come into my little abode.